to James.
I cannot believe it. Well, hey everybody, welcome back to Cheap Brew. I'm Anthony. Today we're going to take a break from our traditional fermentation style video and we're going to focus on doing something I've been waiting a very long time to do. We're going to collect the sap from a couple of maple trees, and over the winter we're going to stockpile it and eventually boil it down into some maple syrup. Now, I don't live on the East Coast where the sugar maple lives and grows. I live in the Pacific Northwest. The only maple that we see predominantly is the big leaf maple tree. Lots of people don't know that you can collect the sap from these and make it into syrup. This tree has been running since about 11 o'clock this morning, and we have collected a hefty amount of sap. It's gonna take quite some time to collect enough sap to make maple syrup out of this. So while we're waiting, I figure we should talk about the ins and outs of how making maple syrup works and how you can do this at home. This is 100% pure Pacific Northwest big leaf maple sap, and it's our starting point on our journey to big leaf maple syrup. You might notice it looks exactly like water, and that's pretty much because it is water. In fact, only 1% of this liquid is sugar. So in order to make this into syrup, we're gonna take it and we're gonna boil most of the water out of it so that the sugars are more prevalent. It's gonna increase the amount of sugar relative to the water. If we wanted to make 1 gallon of maple syrup out of this, we would need 80 gallons of sap, which is an insane amount, especially considering that the weather that you need to collect this stuff really only happens in a very short window of time. In order to collect sap from maple trees in general, you need to have freezing temperatures at night followed by a thaw in the morning. Unfortunately, in the Pacific Northwest, that doesn't always occur regularly. And the reason why you need that specific set of weather is because the temperature changes actually causes a pressure difference inside the tree that causes the sap to flow up and down. That sap will flow out of wounds or tap holes that you make to collect the syrup. Which begs the question, how do you tap a maple tree? The first step is to find a maple tree that you want to tap. What you're looking for is a tree that's in good health, has a good amount of sunlight during the day, and is also between 8 and 24 inches in diameter around the trunk. This one in particular, I can tell that sap is running through because it has an injury right here with sap leaking out of it. The next step is to drill your tap hole. So when you're drilling your tap hole in the maple tree, you want to start about 2 to 4 feet up the trunk of the tree, ideally on the sunlit side, but any side will do if that's not an option. You also want to choose a location that is at least 6 inches away from a previous tap hole or injury, that's horizontally, or 18 inches vertically. That'll make sure that you get good sap flow in the wood. To drill your tap hole, you want to take your drill and point it at a slightly upward angle into the tree and to drill about 2.5 inches deep. Make sure you drill out all the wood shavings, and with luck, the sap will start to flow immediately. Once that's done, the only thing left to do is to add your spile and hook up some tubing or attach a bucket to collect the sap. Now in the Pacific Northwest, it rains quite often, so I'd highly recommend you collect your sap by using one of these PVC tubes, running it from your tap and into your 5-gallon bucket. This will keep the rainwater out and it'll keep any random chunks of moss or bark from falling off the tree and into your sap that you've collected for the day. In some cases, a maple tree might be big enough for you to put more than 1 tap in it. This tree is a perfect example of that. As a general rule of thumb, if the tree is 18 inches or more in diameter, you can put up to 2 taps in it, and you can consider using 3 taps if the tree is greater than 25 inches in diameter. Now that we've covered everything you need to know about tapping and collecting sap, let me tell you how I'm going to store the sap to keep it fresh after I collect it. The sap I collect is going to be stored in my chest freezer in my garage, inside the 7-gallon pot that I'm going to use to boil the sap into maple syrup on sugaring day. If I collect a lot of sap, I'll use the reduce as I go method. As I collect a full pot of sap, I will reduce it down to 1 gallon, and I will continue to repeat that process until the end of the season, where I will eventually create my first batch of maple syrup. It's important to remember though that sap does not stay fresh forever. You need to freeze it or use it pretty quickly, otherwise it could end up stringy and that will make a really off flavor for the maple syrup. Speaking of maple syrup, the only thing standing between us and it is more sap. Good morning. Today, we're gonna be taking the sap that we've been collecting for the past 3 or 4 weeks. Hi, Leo. I gotta throw the ball for the dog. Anyways, today we're gonna be taking the sap that we've collected for the past 3 to 4 weeks and boiled it down into some maple syrup. We only have about 3.5 gallons, which should make about 9 ounces of syrup. Before we start, I'm gonna go check the tree at my neighbor's place one more time, and then I'm gonna take the kids and we're gonna set up the boiler into our little sugaring pad outside. Nothing. So there was nothing in the bucket to collect, which is about what I expected. So anyway, we came back to the house with an empty bucket, but now we're gonna take our sap and start thawing it out on a little propane burner in the backyard. Ugh, that's heavy. So we've officially begun the process. The sap is thawing out on the burner, and once it's done thawing out, I'm actually gonna move this pot off and set it right here, and we're gonna start pouring it into a more shallow pot. The shallow pot's gonna make it so that the boil off rate increases, which gets us to our syrup a little bit faster. So while we're boiling the sap, there's a couple things that you should be kind of on the lookout for. The first of which is foam. As you start to reduce the sap, it is going to start to foam up just a little bit. And as the foam builds up, you're going to want to scoop it out with a regular old kitchen strainer. And Aria, what color is the foam that we want to scoop out?
Brown.
How does that make you feel?
Yucky.
And it would make the syrup taste yucky too. So we're going to show you, since it's building up a little bit of foam, kind of how to take care of that right now. The other thing that you should be thinking about while doing the boil is the fact that as you boil off all the water, it's going to become more sugary, and things with sugar tend to boil over a little bit easier. A boil over of maple syrup is going to be super sticky. Those are kind of the things that you should be looking for. The only thing left to do is to finish boiling the sap. Here we go. We're just about done with this. We've probably got about 3/4 of a gallon to a half gallon. So I'm guessing another half an hour or so we'll be moving this to the stove. It's starting to get a yellow color. I'm waiting for it to turn brown. I think I'm gonna have to wait until we get it into the kitchen for that. But overall, we're just about done outside, and the dog really wants me to throw the ball some more, so I might do that. Now that we've made it inside to finish off the last quart of our sap and boil it down into our maple syrup, let's talk about how much further we really need to reduce this. The point at which you get the sap to turn into syrup is when the sugar content is about 66 to 67%. You could use a refractometer to tell, but I don't have one of those, so what I'm going to be using is the temperature. I've got a thermometer sitting here in the pot, and when the temperature of the last little bit of this sap is up to about 7 degrees over boiling, which here at sea level is about 219 degrees, that's when you should stop. I might not be able to measure that quantity all the way down, given the fact that it might only be just measured in like less than 10 ounces. So I'm gonna eyeball it, or I'll reach the temperature with more syrup than I anticipated. But either way, that's the next step. I've got the pot on a very low heat so that it can kind of simmer away, and since there's not much of it in general, it's going pretty quickly. We should be done here in probably about an hour. And after about 6 to 7 hours of boiling our maple sap, we're left with 8 ounces of big leaf maple syrup. It's probably slightly less than 66%, but I did want to have something to show for it, and I will tell you that this is sweet syrup. Wow, that is so unique. One of the things that you'll notice if you're trying this at home for the first time is that even with the cheesecloth filter, you're gonna have some particulates in there. You really need a better filter, like an actual syrup filter, if you want to filter that out. I'll tell you what that is right now though. The floaties in here, that's niter, those little sugar crystals that will drop out after you cool this for I don't know, some amount of time. So to help the process along, I'm going to put it in my fridge and we're gonna check on this tomorrow. And here we are about 2 weeks later in all actuality with our refrigerated bottle of Big Leaf maple syrup. And you can kind of see there on the bottom, that little layer there, that is all the niter that's fallen out of the solution. I misspoke a couple seconds ago. Niter is not sugar crystals per se. They call it sugar sand, but what it really is calcium and other minerals that have fallen out of the solution. As you can see, after a couple weeks though, there is some clarity to this, even though it's been kind of chilling in the refrigerator. There's clarity there. Now, before we get too much further, I will be doing a taste test here in just a couple minutes, but not before I test out my handy dandy refractometer. I'm gonna take a small little bit of the maple syrup. I'm gonna dip it right here onto this little screen there, and I'm gonna show you the reading. This should tell us by weight the percentage of the maple syrup that is sugar. Looks like we're at 62.5 Brix. So by weight, 62.5% sugar, which means that I don't think we would have gotten that much darker with the syrup, but there would have been a little bit less. So we're pretty close to what Big Leaf maple syrup should be. So I'll take this as a W. Now it's time to give it a little bit of a taste test with this spoon and see what kind of notes we can come up with for what this actually tastes like. All right. Really good. It's there's a lot of vanilla. It would make a nice addition to a vanilla latte. I don't get a lot of like maple, just a lot of kind of like vanilla and butterscotch. It's like a liquid butterscotch candy. It is nothing like regular maple syrup. Totally different. Its own unique product, but it's so damn good. And this is even shy of how sweet it's supposed to be. Well, I think that's good, but I'm really curious to see what the rest of the neighborhood thinks about Big Leaf maple syrup.
Trying to get a flavor for this.
No, that's not bad.
The aftertaste is like maple syrup, but there's something medicinal about it.
What would you use it on?
Everything. Anything I could.
You definitely taste the pollen in it. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Sure.
But it has like a honey flavor. I put it on some chicken.
It seems like there's a little bit of like citrusy flavor, like a tangerine, like a sweet citrus flavor, not like a bitter or sharp one. I mean, it tastes like really light maple syrup. No, I'd put that on breakfast foods.
What would you put it on?
Nothing. We put it on nothing.
Ice cream pizza together.
Okay, the last question was, do you want more?
Yes, I would definitely have
Okay.
some more.
Yeah.
No. Sorry.
It may not look like it, but it is the end of the maple tapping season. In fact, maybe even a couple weeks ago, we started to get another cold patch where the sap came out, but it just tasted a little bit earthy, and that's usually an indication that one, it's the end of the season, but two, that the trees are about to bud. We got a surprise snow here in March though, so the trees are gonna have to hang on just a little bit longer. But me, nothing left to hang on to. Time to take the taps out and then put all the stuff away. As the season and the video draw to a close, I hope you're able to learn something about tapping big leaf maple trees and get a chance to do it. I'm going inside to put the bucket away after I scrape the rest of the snow off. And remember, drink more homebrew or drink more maple syrup. I'll catch you on the next one.